The bright fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Mia stood at the security entrance of the research facility. She was the newest member on the team, still learning the ropes of this highly classified environment. Every day felt like she was walking on a tightrope, balancing the thrill of being part of something important with the fear of making a mistake. Today was no different. Mia checked her watch. It was early morning, the kind of quiet moment when the world hadn't quite woken up. She took a deep breath, reminding herself that everyone here was just human. Stepping up to the access control panel, she carefully swiped her ID badge. The machine beeped in response, granting her entry. She felt a tiny rush of pride. She was part of something big. As she walked through the lobby, she noticed the usual buzz of activity. Scientists and engineers hustled past her, their faces serious and focused. Mia felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She still wasn't completely accustomed to the high stakes that floated in the air like a thick fog. But then she saw him, a man in a crisp black suit looking like he just stepped off a movie set. He was tall, with sharp features and a confident stride. There was something about him that immediately sent alarms ringing in her mind. He was a stranger, but not just any stranger. He had an aura of authority that made Mia's stomach twist. She watched as he approached the security desk where her colleague Mark sat, tapping away at his computer. The man in the suit held up his badge and Mark nodded without a second thought. That was when Mia's instincts kicked in. Something felt off. Why was someone so distinguished looking just walking around like he owned the place? Mia knew her job well. Access badges were crucial in this line of work. Security clearances weren't just pieces of plastic. They represented trust, loyalty, and the weight of responsibility. She couldn't just let it be. With her heart racing, she decided to step in. "Excuse me," Mia said, trying to keep her voice steady. The man turned to her, eyebrows raised, genuinely surprised at being questioned. For a moment, she felt a flicker of doubt. Was she crossing a line? But then, she remembered all the training sessions where they stressed the importance of vigilance. He asked, his voice smooth. "Just protocol," she replied, forcing herself to maintain eye contact. Mark looked up, confusion washing over his face. "Mia, it's okay." But Mia stood firm, her instincts screaming at her. She didn't want to seem paranoid, but a nagging feeling wouldn't let her back down. "Please," she said, confronted by the weight of the moment. "Just let me check." The man's expression shifted, a flash of annoyance crossing his features. But then something in his eyes flickered to life, a hint of amusement. "You must be new here." Mia could feel the tension rising. The nonchalance in his tone didn't match the gravity of the situation. She pressed on, just for a moment. As she stood there waiting for the outcome, the air felt thicker. She retrieved her tablet and started typing in the details. There was an awkward silence as the man watched her, his expression hardening. Mia noticed how the light seemed to change around him, darkening slightly as if they'd stepped into a different world. "Listen, what you're doing is unnecessary," he said, his voice dropping a notch, almost menacing. But she wasn't backing down. Mia felt the heaviness of his gaze like a weight pressing on her chest. She added in his last name and the screen word to life, processing the information. The moment stretched on like an eternity, and she could feel beads of sweat forming on her brow. She wanted the answer, but deep down, she also feared what it would show. Finally, the screen blinked. The name appeared, but it was what followed that made her freeze in disbelief. The man's clearance wasn't just high, it was through the roof, a level very few would ever achieve. Access to the most secure modules, unprecedented. Mia's heart sank. How could she have doubted him? Here was someone with a prestigious history, trusted with some of the country's most sensitive data. She opened her mouth to apologize, but hesitated. The tension in the room had shifted again, thick with implications. He said, his surprise fading into something more chilling. There was something about the way he said it that sent cold shivers down her spine. It felt as if he was revealing something unsaid, a power play in a realm she still didn't completely understand. Mark, still watching, now seemed taken aback. "Mia, it's fine," she interrupted, feeling a mix of embarrassment and unease. "Learning is important," he replied, his voice smooth as silk, "but it's equally important to know who to trust and who to question." His eyes bore into hers, the weight of his words heavy like a warning. Mia nodded, swallowing hard. A wave of confusion washed over her. What had just happened? Had she really done the right thing? As the realization sunk in, regret gnawed at her. Maybe she had overstepped, maybe she had made a fool of herself, but there was another lingering thought. Was this man as trustworthy as he seemed? The rest of the day passed in a strange haze. She tried to focus on her tasks, averaging the data analysis she had been assigned. Yet every time her mind wandered, it returned to that moment. The feeling in her gut wouldn't leave her. Did she let safety slip by? Was authority just a facade? Later that afternoon, Mia found herself in the break room, trying to shake off the lingering weight of the encounter. She poured herself a cup of coffee, each sip grounding her slightly. Mark walked in, still looking a bit shaken too. "Hey, I get it," he said, running a hand through his hair. "You did what you thought was right, and honestly, I respect that." Mia sighed, leaning against the counter. "But what if I should have let it go?" Mark shook his head. "You're just learning. You'll get a feel for things. You'll know when to pause and when to act." Just then, the door swung open and the man in the suit walked in again, his presence filling the room. Mia felt her cheeks flush. She wanted nothing more than to sink back into the shadows. He nodded at both of them, an unsettling grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Mark, Mia," he said, his voice smooth like oil. "Hope there's no hard feelings." There was something unspoken in his words, a challenge behind that carefully crafted smile. Mia felt a chill creep up her spine, realizing, perhaps too late, that this wasn't just about security clearances. This was about power dynamics and trust. She was still new here, but if she was going to survive, she needed to learn fast. Days turned into weeks, and Mia gradually settled into the rhythm of the facility. She studied hard, absorbing everything, but the man haunted her thoughts. Each time she saw him in passing, she felt that electric tension again, as if he was a shadow lurking just beyond her reach. One afternoon, Mia was in a small conference room, poring over data when she felt the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. The door creaked open, and there he was, stepping in without a word. It was as if the air had changed density. "I wanted to check on your progress," he stated, casually leaning against the doorframe. His presence was commanding, drawing her attention like a moth to a flame. "Things are going well," Mia replied, trying to sound confident. His voice was low, as if he were sharing a secret. His eyes were piercing, and for a moment the room felt too small for both of them. She questioned, raising an eyebrow. "Those who navigate the intricate dance of trust and betrayal," he said smoothly. "You never know when someone might turn." Mia felt her heart quicken. Was he warning her or threatening her? Of course, he beamed. There was a glint of something in his eyes, but she couldn't decipher it. Was it challenge? Was it sincerity? Days later, as she prepared a report for an upcoming meeting, something clicked inside her. It dawned on her that the calm facade he displayed masked deeper currents of intrigue and danger. This man could pull strings behind the scenes, but she had her own ambitions. She wasn't just a rookie anymore, she was determined to carve her own path. That evening, as she finished her work, she resolved to enhance her awareness, gather more information, and learn the unspoken rules of this rigid environment. Trust was a currency, and she needed to understand its value. Out of nowhere, Mia received an email alert. It was an invitation to a confidential team dinner. The man was one of the prominent figures organizing it. A mixture of excitement and trepidation gripped her. This was her chance to see behind the curtain. The night of the dinner arrived, and the atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Conversations entwined like vines, but her thoughts kept glancing toward him, across the room with that same magnetic presence. People laughed and shared stories. They were trading more than just tales, they were weaving their fates together. As the night rolled on, Mia found herself engaging with other members of the team, gathering insights and slowly building her connections. But the man in the suit still lurked at the edge of her awareness. His charisma was infectious, but there was always that hint of danger behind it. Suddenly he approached, drink in hand. An orchestra of emotions played in her chest. Was it a trap or an opportunity? She took a deep breath, deciding to seize her moment. They stepped aside, and the chatter faded into a distant hum. "You've been making quite an impression," he started, a playful smirk on his lips. "I'm not afraid to ask tough questions," she said, meeting his gaze head-on. "Good to know," he replied, an inscrutable expression flickering across his face. Mia felt the weight of those words settle in. Trust was a perilous ladder, and she was still a few rungs away from the top. But perhaps she could learn to navigate her way through this intricate world of secrets and power. As they stood there, locked in a silent contest, Mia realized she wouldn't let herself be intimidated anymore. Confidence surged within her, urging her to think strategically, to challenge what she didn't understand. Maybe this role, this life was more than a job. It was a journey into the depths of human connection and ambition. And in that moment, she chose to step forward, ready to engage with whatever came next. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Mia stared at the unfamiliar face in front of her. He wore a tailored suit, sharp and polished, but his expression was anything but friendly. The tension in the air sparked like static electricity. Her heart raced, and time seemed to slow as his access badge glinted under the harsh lights. The man paused, surprise flickering across his face. The cool confidence that dripped from him had slipped for just a moment. There was a heavy pause, as if the air had thickened around them. "Mia, it's all right," Mark's voice floated from behind the security desk. He was her colleague, but seemingly unaware of the storm brewing in the room. Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "I just need to verify," she insisted, eyes locked onto the stranger. With a smile that felt more like a threat than a greeting, the man raised an eyebrow. She wouldn't back down. There was something about him that sent chills down her spine. The gravity of this moment pulled at her instincts. In a place like this, a research facility teeming with secrets protocol was everything. The man's amusement drifted away, replaced by a steely glare. "I may not know everything," Mia shot back, feeling the rush of adrenaline. The standoff stretched like an elastic band, taut and full of potential energy. Mark looked sheepishly between them, visibly uncomfortable. Finally, with a sigh, the man reached for his badge. "Fine." Mia swallowed hard, but she didn't falter. She took the badge from his hand, her fingers barely grazing his, and then she froze. The access level on the badge was astonishing. It wasn't just high, it was among the highest secure compartments, classified data, deep government secrets. Each line of text glowed ominously on the screen, as if mocking her. She stammered, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. Her bravado slipped away like sand through her fingers. The corners of his mouth curled into a smirk. Let's just say I'm someone who can open doors for you, or close them. Mark shifted awkwardly behind the desk, unsure of how to react. The man turned, his confident stride taking him toward the exit. Next time, choose your battles wisely, Mia, he called over his shoulder, his voice smooth and chilling. With that, the door closed behind him and the facility felt smaller and less safe. Mia stood frozen in place, shock mingling with realization. What had she just done? The room felt heavy with the weight of unspoken rules and unseen dangers. She had questioned a man with extraordinary power, and now she felt like a pawn on a chessboard she didn't fully understand. As the days slipped by, Mia found herself haunted by that encounter. She threw herself into her work, but the sting of doubt clung to her like a shadow. What if she had overstepped? What if she had made an enemy? Every time she passed the security station, her heart raced. Mark seemed friendly enough, but the world they worked in was rife with unspoken tension. She didn't want to be afraid, but fear wove itself into the very fabric of the research facility. One day, while analyzing data in a quiet corner, she overheard snippets of conversation floating from the break room. Names were mentioned, high-profile projects, classified information. Each name felt like a code she didn't have the key to decipher. As she listened, snippets of knowledge danced in her mind, turning into an insatiable curiosity. In the following weeks, she noticed the man in the suit more frequently. He possessed an almost magnetic presence, drawing people toward him even as they stood on shaky ground. He commanded attention without even trying. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Each time their eyes met, hers would dart away, heart thumping in her chest. Then one rainy evening, as the facility emptied out, Mia found herself alone in the halls. She was finishing up a report when she heard the click of heels echoing down the corridor. Anxiety twisted in her stomach like a coiled snake. The door swung open. It was him again, the mysterious man in the tailored suit. He asked casually with a smirk on his lips that sent shivers down her spine. "Just finishing up," she replied, forcing herself to meet his gaze. His grin widened. "Home, my work rarely leaves me." Intense, Mia admitted, feeling exposed under his scrutinizing gaze. "Oh, there are layers to everything," he said, stepping closer. His voice wrapped around her like a seductive whisper, making the walls of the sterile room feel stifling. Was he flirting, or was it something darker? She asked, summoning all her courage. He replied, chuckling softly, "I want to know if you're going to continue asking questions." Her heart thudded in her chest. "I ask because I want to learn," she stated, steeling herself in his eyes. With that, he turned on his heel and left, leaving Mia standing there, her pulse racing and her mind whirring. She was left with more questions than answers, as if he dropped breadcrumbs that hinted at a trail to somewhere, but the path was obscured. Days turned into weeks, and Mia became entrenched in her work. She developed a reputation for her determination and keen insight, moving beyond rookie status. Yet when she looked in the mirror, she still saw that moment, the accusation, the badge, the overwhelming sensation of vulnerability. Then came the day that changed everything. Mia attended a high-stakes briefing where privileged information was shared, secret projects that could affect national security. The atmosphere buzzed with tension. Each department head was there, with the infamous man seated at the head of the table. As the briefing continued, Mia felt the tension pierce through her. She watched him as he spoke, effortlessly commanding attention and respect. It was evident that he held power over the room, wielding influence like a weapon. But then something caught her attention, a slip of paper on the table, carelessly left behind. Her mind raced. What did it all mean? She didn't have time to consider as the man locked eyes with her. He asked, his tone smooth but laced with challenge. "Actually, yes," she said, heart pounding. She spoke with confidence, piecing together what she'd overheard, weaving her thoughts into a tapestry of logic and urgency. The room fell silent, every face turning to her. When she finished, the room erupted with animated discussions. For a moment she felt a rush of triumph, but then she noticed the man's expression. His smile had vanished, replaced by a tense glare. "Interesting thoughts," he said coolly, but the light in his eyes had shifted. Mia felt the weight of his gaze bear down on her. Was standing up that dangerous? What had started as a moment of courage now felt like a dangerous game of chess, with each piece carefully placed. Later that day, she found herself in the break room, replaying the chaos of the meeting in her mind. Mark walked in, a cup of coffee in hand. "You did well in there," he said, eyeing her thoughtfully, "but I saw the way he looked at you." She asked, the tension knotting in her stomach again. "I just mean, he has influence," Mark replied, caution threading his voice. "You challenged him in front of everyone." Panic surged through Mia again. Had she sealed her fate? She clutched the edges of the table, fighting the urge to spiral into fear. "I can't just stay silent." Mark nodded slowly, genuine concern seeping through. "Just tread carefully, okay?" Days passed, and Mia felt like she was walking through a minefield. Each interaction with the man carried an edge. He'd smile, but there was always something cold beneath it, a warning disguising itself as charm. Finally, the tension reached its peak. There was another meeting, the room was full, and Mia sat silently running through scenarios in her mind. What if he attempted to undermine her contributions next? What if he tried to shift the conversation away from her? The meeting stretched out, and finally the man called on her. The challenge in his tone clanged like a bell, echoing through the room. She took a deep breath, unwilling to falter in front of spectators. The implementation conditions need more scrutiny, she responded confidently. As she spoke, she noticed his eyes darkening, calculating. You're suggesting we shift our current strategies, bold. With a surge of determination, she held her ground. He held her gaze, a flicker of respect perhaps, but mostly a warning that echoed through the air. The meeting continued, but the air between them felt electric, charged with unspoken tension. When it finally concluded, Mia felt a mix of victory and dread. She had succeeded in standing her ground, but wondered at what cost. The dance was far from over. That evening, as Mia walked through the dimly lit hallways, she felt a cold sensation creep down her spine. The shadows around her felt alive, lurking just beyond her vision. Did she dare take this path further, risk everything again? Suddenly, the man appeared at the end of the corridor. She felt her heart race, fear and adrenaline mixing as she approached. I was hoping to catch you, he said smoothly, wearing that same unsettling smile. Thanks, she replied cautiously, trying to read the tension in the air. Just remember, though, strength and recklessness are two sides of the same coin, he cautioned, his tone suddenly serious. Mia asked defiantly, refusing to backtrack. Not at all, he replied, stepping closer, invading her space. As he turned to leave, his final words lingered in the air, heavy with implication. The game is always on. Mia stood there, a mixture of confusion and empowerment swelling within her. She had come too far, she was learning. The challenge, the uncertainty, it fueled her resolve. In that moment, she understood she was not just a player in the game, she had become the game herself. As she walked toward the exit, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Each step echoed with purpose. She would navigate this labyrinth of power, strategy, and intrigue, asserting herself with the willpower to challenge the unknown. In a place like this, where every choice felt monumental, fear was just another part of the equation. And as she pushed through the doors into the night, Mia felt a new sense of strength swell within her. She would rise, ready to confront whatever came next. She was determined to prove that she wasn't just a player, she was the one calling the shots. The overhead lights flickered slightly, and as Mia stood at the security check-in desk, the hum of machinery in the background filled the air. She had just started her new job at the highly classified research facility. Every step felt like walking on a tightrope. This was a place where secrets were currency and trust was a fragile thing, easily broken. Her heart raced as she noticed a man in a crisp black suit stride confidently toward the desk. He had an air of authority that felt almost suffocating. Mia's instincts kicked in, a spark ignited in her gut. Who was he, and what was a man like that doing here so early? Good morning, the man said, his voice smooth and reassuring, almost too smooth. He raised his badge in a casual gesture. Mia instinctively glanced at Mark, the security officer on duty. He looked ready to grant access right away, but something in her gut twisted. Protocol was her responsibility, and before she knew it, the words escaped her lips, fueled by a mix of courage and naivete. Mark's head snapped up, a blend of surprise and concern flashing across his face. Mia, it's okay. Just a moment, Mia pressed, dismissing her doubt. She turned her attention back to the man, whose calm demeanor had shifted slightly to something more menacing. He asked, his voice low and dangerous. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face, but there was something else. Was it intrigue or challenge? I just need to verify, she insisted, her heart beating louder in her ears. She had been trained to look for the signs, to be vigilant in a place where dangers lurked in shadows. He hesitated, and in that moment the air felt like it had thickened. Fine, he said, sliding the badge toward her. Mia took the badge, feeling the weight of it in her hand. She swiped it through the scanner, her eyes drawn to the glowing screen. The words appeared and she froze. Security clearance, level 9. Time stood still. Level 9 wasn't just high, it was extraordinary. Only a select few had access to these layers of secrets, layers that involved national security, groundbreaking research, and potentially devastating consequences. She stammered, caught between disbelief and fear. He smiled darkly, but it didn't reach his eyes. Mark glanced nervously from her to the man, seeming unsure of how to intervene. Mia could feel the heat creeping up her cheeks. She had underestimated the danger. This wasn't just a security check, it was a collision of power and ambition. With that, he turned on his heel and walked away, his presence lingering like a dark cloud. Mia was left standing there, adrenaline flooding her senses, mixed with embarrassment and dread. She had stepped out of line, and now she felt the repercussions hanging over her head like a storm waiting to erupt. Days turned into weeks, and she found herself caught in a whirlwind of work, each day blurring into the next. Yet the man's face was etched into her mind, a constant reminder of her fateful decision. Every time she passed the security desk, a shiver ran rippling down her spine. There was no denying the weight of his authority. The facility itself seemed to breathe, each hallway creeping closer as whispers of secrets filled the air. Mia kept her head down, but her instincts were still sharp. She couldn't shake the feeling that her blunder had set off a chain of events she couldn't even begin to understand. One afternoon, Mia found herself working late, deep in the data analysis she had been assigned. The quiet was eerie and the shadows seemed to stretch longer than usual. She had found solace in her work, using it as a distraction from the gnawing doubt, but then she heard a sound-soft footsteps echoing behind her. The voice was familiar, a smooth baritone that sent a chill down her spine. It was him, the man from before. Mia turned slowly, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Good," he said, stepping into the dim light of the room. "I like to see ambition." Something in his tone made her uneasy and she steeled herself. He leaned against her desk, studying her intently. "Not everyone has the spine to question authority, or it can be the first step to real understanding," she countered, emboldened by the tension brewing between them. For a moment the air was thick with unspoken thoughts, a challenge hanging between them. This wasn't just a battle of words anymore, it felt much bigger. "You have a fire, Mia," he finally said, a hint of admiration softening the edge of his stare. Mia didn't respond, but she could feel a mix of fear and determination swelling within her. She wasn't about to let herself be intimidated. Knowing this facility was fraught with danger, she would learn to navigate its intricacies, even if it meant challenging the very authority that loomed over her. Weeks went by, filled with meetings and reports, but the man's figure lingered in her mind like a riddle begging to be solved. He had the ability to stir her thoughts, and with every passing day, her curiosity overshadowed her fear. What kind of world did he inhabit? One day, as Mia sifted through a particularly extensive file, she stumbled upon a string of emails discussing an upcoming project, decisions made behind closed doors. Words like deployment and containment jumped out at her, sending a wave of anxiety crashing over her. This wasn't just theoretical data, this was painting a picture of real-world implications. "Hey Mia," Mark's voice broke her focus and she looked up to see him peeking through the door, a concerned expression on his face. "Yeah, just going through some files," she said, trying to sound casual, but she felt the urgency rising within her. "Careful." "You're digging pretty deep," he warned, stepping further inside. "I need to know," she replied, a defiant edge creeping into her voice. Mark frowned. "Just don't go poking the bear." That was the moment she realized how much power lay in the shadows, but she was already in too deep and the story meant too much for her to walk away now. There was more than just knowledge at stake, there were lives bound to these decisions. Then came the meeting, one that promised the unveiling of critical information. Mia couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was going to occur. As she entered the conference room, the atmosphere felt electric, charged with the anticipation of unknown revelations. The man was there, seated at the head of the table, exuding confidence. This wasn't just any project, it was the meeting of minds that could change everything. "Let's get started," he said, his voice smooth and commanding as everyone settled in. The tension was palpable as decisions were made, futures plotted, and possibilities discussed. As the conversations unfolded, Mia noticed something peculiar about the responses. There were hints of cover-up, a reluctance in some faces to confront the challenges being discussed. When the moment felt right, she gathered her courage. She interjected, her voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. Immediately, all eyes turned to her. The man's eyebrow arched slightly, a sign of amusement perhaps. His tone dripped with skepticism, but she sensed the challenge wrapped in it. "I think we need to fully understand the implications before we proceed," she stated more firmly. For a split second, the room fell silent. There was a flicker of respect in the man's eyes, but it quickly shifted back to cool indifference. "Interesting perspective, Mia." Mia's heart raced. This wasn't just a conversation, it was a test, but lives are at stake. "You have to understand that in this world, urgency often outweighs caution," he replied, fixing her with a hard stare. The tension radiated between them like a high-stakes chess match, each move calculated and deliberate. "I'm just suggesting we find a balance," she pushed back, feeling the weight of the moment. The room buzzed again with chatter, but she could sense the shift. The man's smile returned, but it felt more like a mask. "You have a strong will, Mia." With that cryptic remark, he returned to the conversation, but Mia understood she had entered dangerous territory. Words mattered here more than they ever had before, and the balance of power was constantly shifting. Days passed, and Mia felt the ramifications of her choices weighing heavily upon her. The man lingered in her thoughts, his smile, his power, the way he moved effortlessly through the corridors of authority. Each interaction was like dancing on a knife edge. Then late one evening, as she sorted through paperwork, Mia was startled by a soft knock on her office door. The man stood there, silhouetted against the harsh hallway light. She hesitated but let him enter. She asked, trying to maintain her composure. "Thought we could talk," he replied, leaning against the doorframe with an easy confidence. "About your recent remarks during the meeting." She asked, eyes narrowing. "Let's just say some people appreciate your ambition while others find it." His eyes danced with a mix of challenge and intrigue. Mia felt a cold wave wash over her. "Let's just say not everyone is thrilled by the way you're shaking things up," he said, stepping closer. The weight of his words landed heavily, and she could feel panic bubbling beneath the surface. He shrugged, a smirk pulling at his lips. "No, but being aware of the risks is crucial." In that brief exchange, she felt something shift deep within her. Was he a mentor, a tormentor, or just a man playing a game? The answers eluded her, but one thing was clear: she was weaving a thread of determination. Days turned to weeks, and soon it was evident that Mia was becoming an integral part of the facility. Yet the precarious balance of power haunted her. Each day felt like a negotiation. Each choice could spiral into disaster or opportunity. Then, a week later, she found herself unexpectedly summoned to a clandestine meeting. Whispers surrounded the gathering, an undercurrent of tension so thick it could suffocate. As the attendees filed in, her heartbeat quickened. In the middle of the room stood the man, poised and ready to wield the microphone like a weapon. "Today's discussions are critical," he began, his tone commanding attention. Mia felt the pressure mounting as decisions were made, veering dangerously close to territory she had warned against. Fear gripped her again. The specter of consequence loomed large, but there was a spark that ignited determination in her belly. "Wait," she interrupted, feeling the energy shift like a tide. It was her moment. If we rush this, we might make a huge mistake. The man turned to her, but this time her resolve held steady. The room fell quiet as tension thickened, and she could sense all eyes glued to the unfolding drama. Would this be a moment of clarity or chaotic unpredictability? For a long moment the man studied her, the corners of his mouth twitching up as if he were enjoying the spectacle. "You're proving to be more than just a minor player in this game," he finally said, his voice low, an approving gleam sparking in his gaze. As tension twisted and turned around her, Mia felt a rush of adrenaline surging through her veins. For the first time, she saw her potential reflected in his gaze. She could play this game. She wouldn't just be another pawn, she would redefine her role. "I came here to do a job," she declared, her voice unwavering. The uncertainty in the room swelled, but one thing was clear: Mia had stepped into the spotlight. She was no longer just a questioner, she had embraced the storm. And amidst the chaos, she felt a newfound strength, one that was poised to face whatever challenges lay ahead. That moment, she realized the real battleground was never about authority or power, it was about courage and the tenacity to speak truth to power. And as she locked eyes with the man once more, she understood this journey was far from over. It had only just begun. The sterile hum of fluorescent lights buzzed in the background as Mia stood behind the security desk, boredom creeping in. Her fingers drummed lightly against the polished surface, and every tick of the clock seemed to echo in the hollow space. It was a quiet morning in the high-security research facility, and for Mia, a new hire, this moment felt like any other. But that was about to change. As the elevator door slid open, a figure stepped out, a man in an impeccably tailored black suit. He moved with the confidence of someone who belonged in this world, a world filled with whispers of classified information and layers of secrecy. Something about him struck Mia as unusual, a flicker of unease crossing her mind. She glanced at Mark, the security officer sitting nearby, who was focused on his computer screen. But this felt important, it felt wrong. The man lowered his sunglasses, revealing a piercing gaze as he approached the desk. He held out an access badge in an almost casual manner. "I need access to the secure labs," he said. His voice was smooth, almost hypnotic. Mia leaned forward, scrutinizing the badge. It seemed real enough, official looking with the necessary holograms and seals. But her instincts flared. This was her job, to ensure that everyone who entered these facilities had the proper clearance. She asked, surprising herself with the boldness in her tone. Mark looked up, startled. "Mia, it's okay." She shook her head, her heart pounding. "Just protocol." The man raised an eyebrow, a smirk forming on his lips. "Absolutely," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. He hesitated and then extended the badge again, this time with a flicker of annoyance. The atmosphere shifted, charged with unspoken tension. Mia took it, her fingers brushing against his. She scanned the badge and the screen lit up, revealing levels of access that made her stomach drop. Security clearance, level 9. Mia didn't just freeze, it was as if the world around her had stopped. The air felt heavy and stale. A rush of panic bubbled up inside her. Level 9, that was reserved for only a select few individuals with extraordinary responsibilities and access to the most sensitive information. She managed to ask, feeling as if she were playing a dangerous game. "Important projects," he replied smoothly, but the way he said it sent shivers down her spine. The weight of this moment crushed her. She had dared to question someone of immense power, someone who could easily dismantle her life with a single word. Suddenly, she was acutely aware of the fact that she was just the newbie, the rookie, and he was playing by rules she didn't fully understand. "Next time, pick your battles wisely, Mia," he said, his voice calm but laced with menace, flashing a smile that felt far from friendly. He collected his badge, turned on his heel, and walked out, leaving her standing in a whirlwind of confusion. Mark's eyes were wide as he watched the man leave. Mia shot back, but questioning someone like that, he's not just anyone. Mark trailed off, clearly grappling with how to phrase his thoughts. She pressed, her curiosity igniting again. "I can't say much," Mark replied, his voice lower. "Let's just say he plays in a different league." As the day turned to weeks, that encounter haunted Mia. She tried to focus on her work, pouring herself into data analysis, but every time she passed the security desk, she felt the weight of that interaction hanging over her like a cloud. The man would often linger in the background, attending meetings, walking the halls with an air of superiority. She couldn't shake the feeling that he was always watching her, waiting for her to make another mistake. Despite her unease, there was a flicker of defiance ignited within her. She refused to let fear dictate her actions. Mia knew she had to learn more about this place, a labyrinth of power dynamics and the people who moved through it. One afternoon, while rifling through files, she overheard snippets of conversation between a few senior researchers discussing a project that seemed to circle back to the man in the suit. "It's too risky," one of them warned. "Then we'll deal with it when that time comes," the other replied with dismissive bravado. Her heart raced as she absorbed the tension in their voices. What were they planning? What involved that man? With each passing day, she felt the weight of information pressing on her, suffocating her every thought. Curiosity curdled into a need to know, a fire ignited in her gut. This wasn't just data anymore, this was about lives, consequences, and a future she couldn't afford to close her eyes to. Then came the day of the big briefing, an official meeting about a project that had been shrouded in secrecy. Talk was rumored to involve government contracts and potentially risky technologies. Mia felt the air crackling as she entered the room, the anticipation thick enough to slice. As she took her seat, she spotted the man sitting at the head of the table, exuding a casual confidence that felt unsettling. The room quieted as he began to speak, each word measured and rehearsed. "Today we're laying the groundwork for Project Horizon," he announced, his eyes sweeping across the room like a hawk looking for prey. Mia felt a pulse of fear surge through her. Project Horizon, it had been mentioned in whispers, but now it had a name, a face, a mission. She hunched over her notes, dissecting every word. The conversation expanded, buzzing with excitement. Names were thrown around, theories were debated. But as discussions progressed, Mia noticed something dark lurking beneath the surface, the eagerness to rush ahead, a creeping sense of danger that thrummed in her intuition. The man's confidence morphed into something bordering on arrogance. "This is our chance to be pioneers. We can redefine the future," he declared, a fervor in his voice, but Mia couldn't shake her instincts. She interjected, her heart pounding. There was a momentary silence, the room falling still. All eyes turned towards her, the tension palpable. "Ambition is great," he replied, fixing her with a pointed stare, "but we can't let fear stop progress." Mia felt the hairs on her neck rise. "But if we don't think about the fallout, we could endanger enough," he cut her off, a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. "We're moving forward." In that moment, she felt trapped between caution and ambition. One wrong word, one misstep, and she knew she could easily find herself on the wrong side of his power. But something inside her shifted. This was all about the greater good, right? She had to speak up, regardless of the consequences. "I just think we should be careful." His stare hardened, and every pulse in the room charged with potential chaos. The meeting concluded with palpable tension, leaving Mia shaken but resolved. Doubt lingered in her mind, but she couldn't turn her back on the truth. She would figure out the bigger picture, no matter the cost. As days turned into weeks, a shift in the dynamic began to emerge. Mia became a more active participant, speaking up in meetings and challenging narrative threads. Yet her interactions with the man remained a dance of power, a constant struggle where one misstep could unravel everything. Then came the day that turned the tide. It was a late evening, the shadows stretching long in the quiet halls. Mia was poring over reports when a knock on the door broke her concentration. The man stood there, the familiar presence sending shivers down her spine. His tone was strikingly casual, but there was a seriousness lurking behind it. Mia's heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. He stepped inside, closing the door after him. "I've been watching you," he said, leaning against the desk with a nonchalance that felt deceptive. She asked, crossing her arms defiantly. "Actually, it might," he replied, a glint in his eye. "You showed real promise in the meetings." "I'm just trying to do what's right," she countered, her heart pounding fiercely. "Risks are part of the game," he replied, his voice steady but filled with an underlying current of intensity. Her instincts screamed to tread carefully. He was edging closer like a predator in the shadows. "I want you to understand the power you wield," he said, narrowing the distance between them. Mia felt a surge of uncertainty. "It means you have an opportunity, a chance to shape the narrative instead of merely reacting to it." Her pulse quickened. It was tempting, tantalizing, but was it worth the risk? "You're asking me to gamble everything." "Sometimes you have to leap without knowing where you'll land," he replied, a confident smile on his lips. The tension in the room thickened, the stakes rising higher. She could feel herself at a crossroads, a decision hovering just out of reach. But with every moment, something inside her began to awaken, a hunger for knowledge, for truth, and a determination to play the game on her own terms. She wouldn't let fear dictate her choices. "I'm in," she said finally, feeling electric energy surge through her. The man's grin widened, and for a fleeting moment she could see the admiration in his gaze. As the days turned into a whirlwind of strategy and engagement, Mia found herself drawn deeper into the world they were shaping. It was chaotic, exhilarating, and at times terrifying, but she was in control. She was no longer just the new hire, she had become a key player in a game she once feared. Through the storm of secrets and schemes, the man's presence loomed large, a mix of challenge and camaraderie. They pushed each other, questioned each other, and together began to reshape the world they dared to inhabit. And in that bold dance of ambition, power, and trust, Mia found strength she didn't know she had. She had stepped out of the shadows and into the light, ready to carve her own path in a place where secrets thrived and caution was the enemy. Every choice came with consequences, but now she was no longer afraid to play the game. She welcomed the unknown, ready to challenges and embrace everything that lay ahead, willing to risk it all for a truth worth standing for. What began as a simple question turned into a journey of discovery, resilience, and the power of choice. And in that moment, she realized the game had only just begun. There was a chill in the air as Mia stood at her post behind the security desk, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows across the slick tile floor. Today was just another ordinary day at the research facility where she had recently been hired. But beneath the mundane routine, a storm was brewing and she was about to be caught in its eye. As the elevator doors opened, Mia's attention snapped to a tall man stepping out. He wore a perfectly tailored suit that seemed designed to command respect, his confidence radiating like a heat wave. But there was something about his presence that set off alarms in her mind, a tingling sense of unease that she couldn't quite shake. He approached the desk with a calmness that felt palpable, almost predatory. "I need access to the secure labs," he said, his voice smooth, dripping with authority. Mia glanced quickly at Mark, the veteran security officer at her side who was engrossed in his computer screen. Did he recognize the man? Did he share her unease? "Sure, right away," Mark replied, leaning forward to check the man's badge. But Mia's instincts pushed her to act. This was her domain, and she wouldn't let fear dictate her choices. "Excuse me," she interjected, surprising even herself with the confidence in her tone. Mark's head popped up like a jack-in-the-box, shock and confusion painting his features. "Mia, it's fine, just protocol," she insisted, her heart pounding in her chest. The man raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement creeping onto his face. "I do," she asserted, meeting his gaze with steely determination. This was about more than just a badge. It was about safety, about trust. In a world filled with hidden agendas and dark corners, she was determined to keep the gate secured. He handed over the badge, the weight of it resting in her palm. As she swiped it through the scanner, the screen illuminated. Security clearance, level 10. The room felt like it had been doused in ice water. Her heart dropped into her stomach. Level 10. That wasn't just high. It was an elite echelon, a maze of secrets and shadows that most people would never set foot in. Suddenly, the air crackled with tension. She managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. "Important matters," he replied, a glint of amusement dancing in his eyes. "Next time, pick your battles wisely, Mia," he added, a sense of menace in his tone as he drew in closer, invading the space like a shark circling its prey. That, he spun on his heel and strode away, his presence lingering in the air like a storm cloud about to unleash rain. Mia stood frozen, her mind racing. She had crossed a line when she didn't fully comprehend. Panic surged within her like a tidal wave, doubts crashed one after the other. What had she just done? Did she just put a target on her back? Mark's voice pulled her from her spiral of thoughts. "You shouldn't have done that," she challenged, realizing she was clinging to false bravado. "Yes, but some people in this place operate by different rules. You've got to learn your boundaries," he warned, the concern evident in his voice. Over the next few days, that encounter haunted Mia, an echo of uncertainty that wouldn't fade. As she immersed herself in her tasks, she couldn't shake the face of the man in the suit from her mind. He was always present in meetings, his vibrant energy commanding the room, and an unnerving confidence glided with him wherever he went. His presence became a shadow that loomed, each small interaction charged with unspoken tension. She felt his gaze follow her, weighing her movements like a predator watching its next meal. It was both exhilarating and terrifying. Mia grappled with a mix of fear and fascination. She started piecing together information, digging deeper into the facility's operations, trying to make sense of the puzzle she found herself in. There were promotions, projects, whispers, and hidden exchanges that hinted at dangers lurking beneath the surface. One afternoon, while lost in data sheets, she overheard two senior researchers in a heated discussion. "If we don't push this out soon, we could lose our lead," one said, his voice thick with urgency. The other replied, a frown creasing his forehead. "You know the risks involved." As anxiety washed over her, Mia began connecting the dots. What incident? What were they planning? The feeling in her gut tightened. Doubts began to spiral into a torrent of questions. She needed answers. The days rolled on, and Mia felt a growing sense of determination. She had a responsibility not only to herself, but to everyone impacted by the decisions being made. If there were hidden agendas, she would uncover them, even if it meant confronting the man whose presence had shaken her to the core. Then the moment arrived. The facility buzzed with excitement over an upcoming meeting that would outline the next steps for the mysterious project they were working on. Mia entered the conference room, anxiety swirling like a thick fog around her, magnified by the man sitting at the head of the table. He exuded an air of authority that made the room feel electric. As he began to speak, she felt her breaths grow shallow. "We're on the verge of a breakthrough," he announced, eyes glinting with fervor. Questions and comments flew through the air like arrows, each met with his charming confidence. But amidst the applause of excitement and ambition, anxiety gnawed at her insides. She blurted out, her voice sharp, slicing through the atmosphere. The room fell silent, all eyes now locked on her. The man's lips curled into a smile. Was it pride, mockery, or something darker? "We can't let fear stop progress, Mia." She pressed, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavily on her shoulders. "Some risks are necessary for breakthrough," he nodded, but his tone shifted, becoming more pointed. A feeling of both defiance and dread coursed through her. "Lives are at stake. We have to protect the people affected by these decisions," she insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. The murmurs resumed, but the tension between them snapped tighter. The man's gaze hardened, and for a moment felt like a whispered yet overwhelming threat. The meeting ended, but not without leaving ripples of uncertainty in its wake. Mia felt a storm brewing inside her, fear mixed with defiance. Each interaction with the man felt like an intricate dance, a battle of wills, and she refused to be a pawn in his game. Days passed, and Mia's resolve hardened. She began to leverage her position, speaking with more confidence in meetings, challenging assumptions, and questioning the path they were on. Yet the man's presence still loomed large, an ever-watchful figure shrouded in mystery. Then came the turning point. It was a quiet evening, the facility running on autopilot as her files overflowed on her desk. Just as fatigue began to set in, the door swung open, revealing the man in the suit. "Mia," he called, stepping into the light, his voice laced with curiosity. She straightened, surprised by his sudden appearance. "Just catching up on some reports," she replied, trying to sound nonchalant. He asked, his eyes glimmering with mischief. "I'm not plotting anything," she shot back, digging her heels in. He countered, taking a step closer, narrowing the distance between them. The scent of his cologne, sharp and sophisticated, enveloped her. "I want to know what's really happening here," she said defensively. He studied her, the corners of his mouth quirking into a knowing smile. "You have the right instincts, but instincts without action are merely thoughts." Her pulse quickened, an electric current racing through her. "Join me," he offered, his voice low, inviting, dangerous. Mia hesitated. "Why would you want me to get involved?" "Because you're bright," he replied, his gaze piercing. The choice lay heavy in the air, filled with uncertainty. Every instinct urged her to tread cautiously, but within her, something new ignited a fire of ambition and curiosity. "I'm in," she said, surprise blooming at her own boldness. His grin widened, and for a moment he looked genuinely pleased. "Excellent." As they navigated the murky waters of the facility together, Mia began to unravel the layers of complexity. Every conversation, every piece of information felt like a thread weaving into a much larger tapestry. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once, the thrill of deception mixed with the weight of responsibility. Then came a day Mia would never forget. They were gathered for another briefing, but this time there was a palpable tension in the air. The man stood at the front, exuding confidence, but his demeanor hinted at something deeper, a need to keep control. "Today we'll discuss the next steps for Project Titan," he announced, scanning the room. Mia felt her heart pounding as conversations morphed into heated debates. The risks were laid bare, yet many voices rose to dismiss caution, eager to push ahead without consideration for the consequences. An idea began to take shape in her mind, and before she could overthink it, she interrupted. "We need a safety protocol in place before we go any further," she stated, her voice steady but unwavering. Silence enveloped the room as all eyes turned to her. The man's gaze didn't waver, betraying nothing. He asked, a rich tapestry of challenge layered into his question. "I've been analyzing our data," she replied, breathless but resolute. He regarded her for a long moment, as if weighing her worth. The tension hummed in the air, each heartbeat drowning in the silence. Then slowly he nodded. "Fair enough." As she presented her proposal, she felt a rush of empowerment. This was her moment. She was no longer just a questioner. She had stepped into a realm of authority, commanding respect in a place filled with shadows. After the meeting, she caught his eye, a hint of approval glimmering there. "You're learning quickly, Mia," he said, a strange mix of admiration and caution in his tone, "but tread carefully." Days morphed into weeks, and Mia became a force to be reckoned with. She took her newfound confidence and wove it into everything she did, thriving under the pressure, using each challenge as fuel to push her forward. While navigating the treacherous waters of ambition and authority, she learned to trust her instincts. The man's presence remained influential in her life, an enigma that sparked both caution and intrigue. Then one night, as she pored over reports in her office, the door creaked open. The man stood there, a contemplative expression on his face. "Mia," he began, his voice tinged with urgency. She asked, surprised, "It's about Project Titan. Information has leaked that could jeopardize everything we're working for." Mia's heart raced. "We need to resolve this before it spirals out of control," he replied, intensity rippling through his words. "I can't do this without you." In that moment, she felt the weight of every choice she had made, every challenge she had faced. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady. As they delved into the shadows together, Mia was pushed further than she had ever imagined. They pieced together information, connecting the dots like a masterful detective, and with every revelation she felt herself growing stronger. It was dangerous work. The stakes were high and she could see the man's true colors flicker between allies and threats, but through it all she trusted her instincts, refusing to be boxed in by fear. Weeks later, as they prepared to confront those responsible for the lake, Mia stood at the precipice of change. She had transformed from the nervous new hire to a confident player in a game that had become all-consuming. "You're ready," he said, his voice steady as they approached their final confrontation. Mia took a deep breath, the moment crystallizing into something monumental. With each step forward, she felt her heart thrum with courage, anxiety intermingled with determination. What began as a question transformed into a journey, she thought, summoning every ounce of resolve she had cultivated. Facing those who had threatened the very fabric of their plans, she understood clearly that this was no longer just about her. It was about safety, integrity, and the fragile balance of influence and ambition. And as she stepped into the light, she felt prepared to embrace whatever came next, knowing her instincts would guide her forward. In a world where secrets thrived and trust hung by a thread, Mia had not only questioned a badge, but she had unraveled a deeper narrative, one that showed how power could bend and shift, but ultimately, how courage defined the path someone chose to take. Mia felt the fluorescent lights hum overhead as she sat behind the security desk, the familiar monotony of her new job settling in like a heavy blanket. It was early morning at the research facility, the kind of quiet that whispered secrets of what lay behind locked doors and restricted access. She was getting used to the rhythm of the place, but today, a pulse of unease threaded through the air. The elevator dinged and the doors slid open. A figure stepped out, a man in a sharply tailored black suit. He moved with an air of authority, confidence radiating from him like a palpable force. Something about him struck a chord deep inside Mia, a flicker of instinct telling her to pay attention. He approached the desk, and as he got closer, she noticed the slight curve of his lips, half smirk, half challenge. "I need access to the secure labs," he stated, his tone smooth yet commanding. "Let me see your badge," she replied, her heartbeat quickening. She glanced at Mark, the seasoned security officer beside her, to see if he would step in. Mark's eyes were trained on the man as he leaned forward. "Mia, it's fine," but the unease blossomed into something sharper. "I still need to verify," Mia insisted, her voice firmer than she anticipated. The tension in the air shifted, and the man's smirk faded ever so slightly. He hesitated but then pulled out his badge, handing it to her with a flick of his wrist that felt dismissive. As she took the badge, heat prickled beneath her skin. This was her job to ensure safety. It was her responsibility, and she wouldn't shy away from it now. Mia swiped the badge against the scanner, her breath catching as the screen lit up. It blinked dangerously, security clearance level 10. The room felt like it had been hit by a sudden shockwave. She stared at the screen, her mind racing. Level 10, that was reserved for the highest echelons of government and military officials. This man was not just anyone, he held power that could move mountains, and she had just questioned him. She managed to ask, her voice trembling slightly. "Let's just say I deal with important matters," he replied smoothly, a flash of condescension in his eyes. The heat of embarrassment crept up her cheeks, but she pushed through. "I still have to verify. Be careful, Mia," he warned, a glint of challenge in his gaze. With that, he turned sharply and strode out, leaving her in a whirlwind of confusion and dread. The faint scent of his cologne lingered in the air, sharp and unmistakable. Mark blinked at her, a mix of shock and concern etched into his features. She shot back, the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Safety is important," Mark replied cautiously, "but you need to know that some people operate on different levels, Mia," she retorted, her heart still racing. But as the days wore on, doubt crept in, dimming her courage. That encounter haunted her like an echo, and she found herself checking over her shoulder in the hallways, always looking for the man in the suit. He was often there, mingling with the upper ranks, his presence a constant reminder of her misstep. One afternoon, while shuffling through a stack of reports, she overheard snippets of a conversation in the break room. Two senior researchers discussed parameters around a project that buzzed under the surface like a wasp nest. "If we don't finalize soon, we could lose our advantage," one researcher said, urgency permeating his voice. The other replied, concern etching his features. Fear gripped Mia. Proper testing, what were they planning? Her instincts screamed that this was not just about research, there were bigger stakes at play. Information churned in her mind, awakening a fire within her. She couldn't just be a silent observer. Days turned to weeks, and every meeting felt like a game of chess maneuvering around the obstacles, weighing every word. The man in the suit remained in the background, an enigmatic figure who thrived on power. With each interaction, she felt a mixture of ambition and fear pushing her to act. One day, another briefing loomed ahead, and as Mia walked into the conference room, her heart raced. The atmosphere buzzed with energy and anticipation, conversations threading together like a tapestry in motion. She sensed the looming presence of the man, sitting at the head of the table, orchestrating the proceedings. "Today we're discussing Project Titan," he announced, confidence dripping from his words. Mia listened intently, noting every word, every gesture. Something felt off, a sense of urgency wrapped tightly around their plans. A series of questions began surfacing within her mind. What were the implications? How could they be so reckless? And before she could stop herself, she interjected, "Wait a minute, what about the potential risks?" Her voice trailed off as the eyes in the room shot toward her, surprise painted across their faces. "Ambition drives innovation, Mia," the man countered smoothly, his gaze never faltering. "But without caution, we could be endangering lives," she argued, the words pouring from her. At that moment, the tension in the room thickened, each heartbeat echoing off the walls. The man's eyes bore into her, glacial yet penetrating, as if he were trying to peel back her layers to find the truth behind her conviction. Every breakthrough comes with risks. Mia felt a chill run through her. Was he warning her or challenging her? She couldn't back down. The meeting shifted uncomfortably and the discussion moved on, but Mia could feel the energy changing, the weight of her words hanging heavy between them. The man's smile was still present, but it felt more like a mask to hide the brewing storm behind his eyes. Days passed, tension weaving through the very fabric of the facility. Mia took her discomfort and converted it into determination. She researched more, gathered data, and built her case quietly but surely. She didn't want to be merely a spectator, she wanted to be a catalyst for change. Then came another pivotal day when a new round of internal discussions would take place, a project evaluation. Mia walked into the boardroom with a stack of documents, her heart pounding as she took her seat. The man was there, seated at the center, handling conversations with masterful grace. "Let's discuss our progress on Project Titan," he said, projecting a quiet authority. As discussions flowed, she felt the familiar urge to speak, each thought bubbling just beneath the surface. But today was different. She had gathered enough insight to back up her perspective. "Before we proceed," she interjected, her voice steady, "I believe we need to reevaluate between the data and the assumptions." The tension shifted and all eyes turned towards her, judgment intertwined with intrigue. This time she didn't back down. And studied her, a flicker of appreciation mingled within his emotions. "Interesting point, Mia," he acknowledged, but there was something in his tone that hinted at the underlying complexities he understood better than anyone. After the meeting, she caught his gaze. "You're growing quite the reputation," he remarked, a hint of admiration laced in his words. "I'm just trying to keep us accountable," she replied, still pushing her boundaries. "I see that," he said, a sly smile creeping onto his face. Those words sank in deep. She was carving out a niche for herself, but at what cost? Each step forward came with an unseen consequence, but her determination only grew. Weeks turned into a blur of reports, meetings, and whispered conversations. But the tension began to escalate within the facility as rumors of the project being fast-tracked circulated. Mia's instincts screamed, warning something was about to go wrong. Then one evening, as she prepared to leave, she heard a knock on her office door. The man stood there, a serious expression replacing his usual bravado. Her heart raced. "There's been a leak," he said, tension lining every word. Panic surged through her veins. "There are individuals who want to sabotage what we're working toward," he explained, his voice tense. Mia was taken aback by the urgency. "I need your eyes and ears. We can figure this out together, but it requires total trust," he said, his tone shifting to something more sincere. Mia felt a swirl of emotions, fear intermingling with excitement and determination. She could no longer be a passive observer. She had to lean into the chaos. "I'm in," she replied, feeling the weight settle in her gut. With every day that passed, they became partners in a game filled with dangers and unpredictability. Together they uncovered whispers, messages, and hidden agendas, piecing together a puzzle that revealed a deeper saga. Each clue felt like a connection forging between them, though uncertainty lingered in the shadows. Mia couldn't deny the magnetic pull, the allure of power mixed with the thrill of risk. The man remained a complex figure, constantly oscillating between an ally and a potential threat, but she felt more empowered than ever. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived, a critical meeting where the board would unveil the fate of Project Titan. Mia's pulse raced as she walked in, each step echoing with unwavering resolve. The room was charged and the atmosphere was electric. As the discussions unfolded, she felt the weight of countless hours invested in preparation. When asked for input, she stood tall, her voice unwavering as she challenged assumptions and reinforced the importance of safety protocols. The man's gaze did not waver, and a sense of pride flickered through him as he presented her case alongside his own. Together, they struck a balance between ambition and caution, crafting a narrative that resonated with everyone in the room. As the meeting concluded, applause filled the room. Mia felt a rush of exhilaration. The collaboration had forged trust and respect. But even as the applause faded, the reality settled in this battle was won, but the war was far from over. In the days that followed, Mia found herself increasingly drawn into the intricate layers of the facility's operations. She realized she had transformed from a mere observer into an active participant in a world that thrived on power dynamics and ambition. But with every step, she felt the hesitation of a double-edged sword at her back. What would be required of her next? Were the stakes about to rise even higher? As she climbed to new heights within the organization, she didn't just question access badges, she challenged the very narrative of power. In a world filled with ambiguity, she stood firm, a beacon of courage in a labyrinth of shadows, ready to face whatever challenges awaited her on the path ahead. She had crossed boundaries, redefined her limits, and embraced the chaos of ambition and risk. And now, standing on the precipice of change, she felt alive, ready to confront every truth, challenge every secret, and navigate the uncharted waters of power. The game had only just begun. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Mia sat behind the security desk of the research facility, tapping her pen nervously against a stack of paperwork. This was her first week on the job, and every sound, every passing face made her heart race a little faster. The hum of the machines around her created an almost hypnotic rhythm, but it also reminded her that she was part of something significant, something potentially dangerous. As if on cue, the elevator door slid open and a man stepped out, instantly commanding the room. He was tall, dressed in a sharply tailored black suit, his demeanor exuding an air of authority. Mia straightened in her seat, a mix of curiosity and apprehension flooding her senses. Who was he? He walked toward her with purpose, but there was something unsettling about his confident stride. As he reached the desk, he flashed a badge, one that glinted ominously under the harsh lights. "I need access to the secure labs," he stated. Mia's instincts kicked in like a reflex. Mark, the seasoned security officer beside her, glanced up, brow furrowed. "Mia, it's fine, just protocol," she replied, holding her ground despite the unease creeping into her throat. The man's expression shifted. Was that annoyance she saw flash across his face? His voice was low, edged with a warning. "Yes, I do," she responded, her pulse quickening. Her heart pounded as if it were trying to escape her chest. She swiped the badge and watched as the screen lit up, the numbers glaring back at her like a spotlight. Security clearance, level 10. The room around her seemed to close in. Every sound receded and her breath caught in her throat. Level 10, that wasn't just high, it was beyond elite, a realm reserved for a select few who held immense power in their hands. She managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper, incredulity flooding her. "Let's just say I handle important matters," he answered, a smirk forming on his lips that didn't reach his eyes. The tension in the room crackled like electricity, thickening the air. She had challenged a man of unimaginable power, and now she was left standing there, a mere pawn in a game she didn't fully understand. The moment felt surreal, like a scene pulled straight from a movie, and her bravado began to crumble under the weight of her own trepidation. With a final glance, he turned on his heel and strode away. The air felt cooler in his absence, laden with the remnants of what just unfolded. "Wow," Mark said after a moment, shaking his head. "You shouldn't have done that." "I had to," Mia shot back defensively, trying to reclaim her confidence. "Yeah, but he's not just anyone," Mark replied, concern softening his tone. "You need to know who you're dealing with around here." She pressed, not ready to back down. "Just," he cautioned. The conversation lingered in Mia's mind as the days turned into weeks. That encounter had snagged on her consciousness like a thorn. She found herself looking over her shoulder, glancing nervously toward the security desk each time she walked by. The man in the suit was everywhere, blending in among the elite, a shadow lurking just out of view. She dove into her work, trying to push the anxiety aside, but the whispers in the hallways grew louder. Each day she felt the tension thrum in the air, palpable like a storm waiting to break. It was during one of those tense mornings that she overheard a conversation between two researchers near the coffee machine. "If we rush this deployment, we could lose everything," one said, anxiety creeping into his voice. "But we can't afford to miss our chance," the other retorted, shaking his head. The first researcher pressed. "We can't just..." Those words sent chills down Mia's spine. What lives? What were they working on? The urgency in their tone tugged at her instincts, igniting a fire of curiosity. She couldn't let this slide. The stakes had never felt higher, and she had to know what they were concealing. In the following weeks, Mia became a silent observer, piecing together fragments of conversations here and there, collecting hints of something brewing beneath the surface. She wasn't just a newcomer anymore, she was driven by the desire to uncover the truth. One evening, the tension peaked as an important meeting approached, one that would finally unveil the new project. Mia took a deep breath, striding into the conference room among the heavy air of anticipation. A long table sat in the center, surrounded by serious faces, and at the head of the table there he was, the man from before, a silent storm of authority. "Let's get started," he commanded, his voice strong and confident. As he began to lay out the details, Mia felt a mixture of excitement and dread. This was the moment she had prepared for, but everything inside her urged caution. What were they really getting themselves into? The meeting progressed, with each colleague eager to share ideas and enthusiasm. But Mia sensed a darker undercurrent beneath the surface, a drive to push forward at any cost. When it felt right, she interjected, "What about the risks involved?" A hush fell over the table. The man turned to her, and a flicker of amusement crossed his features. "Mia, ambition drives innovation. But isn't caution part of responsibility? We have to think about the implications for everyone involved," she pressed, feeling the unease twisting in her gut. His gaze intensified, and in that moment, she knew she was walking a tightrope. Emotions ran high, and the stakes were clear. But this wasn't just about her anymore. This was bigger. "You're showing courage," he finally said, but there was a hint of condescension woven in. Mia stood her ground, the fire in her spirit flaring to life. "We owe it to ourselves to be accountable." The meeting concluded with mixed responses, but as she left, she could feel his eyes on her, a weight of intrigue, perhaps even respect, lingering in the air. He had shaken things up, and while it terrified her, it also fueled her resolve. Days passed, and culminating tensions transformed the air into something electric. Mia felt empowered by her growing presence in the offices. She was finding her voice in the storm. But the man's shadow always loomed, a constant reminder of risk. Was he an ally or a foe? She couldn't tell. Every encounter was a delicate dance between ambition and caution. Then came that pivotal day, an invitation to a clandestine briefing. The air buzzed with anticipation as Mia arrived, her heart racing within her. As she settled in, she spotted the man seated at the head of the table, flipping through a brief. Hushed conversations surrounded her, and tension coiled like a spring. As the meeting unfolded, Mia listened intently, noting every nuanced shift in tone, every flick of uncertainty. Whispers of leaks breezed across the table, and the atmosphere thickened with worry. "Speed is crucial, but we need to ensure we're prepared," one voice argued. "You're underestimating what's at stake. We can't afford to lose this opportunity," the man interjected, his voice unyielding and stark. Mia felt urgency stir within her once again. It was time to act, time to push her boundaries further. His eyes met hers, and the intensity of the moment sent shivers down her spine. He asked. "Yes," she said, the conviction strong in her heart. "Lives are at stake." A tension-filled silence enveloped the room, and it felt as if every person was holding their breath. Finally, he nodded slowly, a blend of caution and intrigue flushing across his face. "Interesting perspective, Mia." As the discussions wrapped up, Mia felt a lumbering relief wash over her. She had asserted herself once again, but she now understood the weave of power that surrounded them. This wasn't just research. Lives hinged on their decisions. Weeks turned into a whirlwind of activity, with every meeting increasing in tension and urgency. Mia became entrenched in the complexity around her, determined not to let her voice be silenced. Yet the weight of the man's duality loomed large. A dance between trust and wariness became intricate. Then one fateful evening, as she sorted through countless reports, she sensed he was nearing. The door creaked open, and there he was, stepping inside with an urgency she hadn't seen before. "We need to talk," he said, an edge sharpening his tone. She felt her stomach drop. "There's been a breach," he announced, voice low and serious. Panic surged through her. "What do you mean?" "We're not sure, but we need to contain the situation," he replied, his brow furrowing with pressure. The fire inside her reignited, and she nodded. "Help me find out who's behind it. We can't let this spiral," he ordered, his intensity gripping her. Without thinking twice, she agreed. "I'm in." As they dug deeper, the clock ticked away, and urgency plagued their pursuit of the truth. Each discovery unfurled layers of deception lurking in the shadows. The thrill of the chase intoxicated Mia, igniting her ambition in a way she had never experienced. Through late nights and endless conversations, she unearthed evidence that sharpened their focus and further revealed hidden agendas. The more they uncovered, the more she felt intertwined with the man, their fates bound together in this precarious dance. With every twist and turn, she chose to trust her instincts, navigating the complex world that surrounded them. Days melted into nights, but they pressed forward, seeking answers amidst the chaos. Then one evening, they arrived at a critical meeting that would determine everything. The room pulsed with tension, filled with executives and advisors gathered to discuss the ongoing situation. The man stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding authority, yet she sensed an undercurrent of desperation beneath his bravado. "We have to act decisively," he said, his voice strong yet tinged with urgency. "This isn't just about Project Titan anymore." Mia felt every eye in the room turn toward her, and she realized this was her moment to act. She stood tall, confidence surging through her. "We can't ignore the risks we're facing," she said, meeting the man's gaze, willing him to share her resolve. "There are lives at stake," she continued, passion fueling her words. The tension shifted, and she sensed a combination of respect and astonishment ripple through the crowd. For the first time, she saw the man's expression shift, something akin to pride mingled with surprise. After discussions unfolded and strategies tangling like threads, there was a sense of camaraderie settling in. They worked through the nuances, united in their goals, and as the meeting concluded, applause filled the room. Her heart raced, not just from the accolades, but from a growing, undeniable understanding of her own power. She had stepped into the light, willing to confront fears and stand tall against authority. Days turned into an acceleration of change within the facility. The team grew closer, united by both ambition and purpose. Mia felt empowered, no longer just a new hire. She had found her voice. But even in that sense of empowerment, uncertainty lingered. The man remained a complex figure in her life, someone she had come to admire, but also someone who held the power to unravel it all. Then there came a message, an invitation to discuss the next steps for Project Titan. As she approached the meeting, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that her world was teetering on the edge, the stakes higher than ever. Inside the conference room, the air hung heavy with anticipation. The man stood at the front, radiating authority. His voice cut through the tension as he announced what would happen next, but as he spoke, Mia felt an overwhelming rush of determination. This was her moment again. She couldn't let fear dictate her choices. She had forged her path so far. "I believe we can create a comprehensive safety plan before pushing forward," she suggested, unwavering. The man's gaze met hers, and she could sense the respect beneath his intensity. "You're proving to be a key player, Mia," he said, and for the first time there was warmth in his tone. With the agreement of the board, they began formulating a plan together, Mia's insights weaving through the discussions as they crafted a strategy grounded in accountability. As the meeting concluded and a sense of success reverberated throughout the room, Mia stood there, heart racing. She had stepped from the shadows into a realm where her choices mattered. The man approached her, and for a fleeting moment there was a connection and understanding forged through shared challenges and triumphs. "Because I believe in what we're doing," she replied, the conviction unwavering. With that declaration, something shifted. Mia had challenged the status quo, and in doing so, she placed herself firmly in the narrative of the facility. No longer afraid of power, she was carving her own path, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. As she walked out into the corridor, determination surged within her. She had questioned an access badge, but in doing so, she had uncovered so much more. It was a journey that had transformed her into a formidable force in a world filled with shadows. This was just the beginning. She was prepared to embrace every challenge, to champion responsibility, and to elevate the dialogue of power. In a landscape rife with ambition, she chose to shine her light, ready to lead the way toward the truths waiting to be revealed. Mia stood at the security desk, the hum of fluorescent lights enveloping her in a sterile cocoon. She was new, still finding her footing in this highly classified research facility. Each day felt like stepping onto a tightrope, suspended between excitement and anxiety. Today, however, a shift in the atmosphere signaled the beginning of something she couldn't quite grasp yet. The elevator doors chimed open and a figure stepped out, a tall man in a sharply tailored black suit, moving with the kind of confidence that instantly raised the hairs on the back of her neck. He strode toward her with purpose, his sharp features framed by dark hair that looked meticulously styled. Mia's heart raced. She hadn't seen anyone like him in the facility before. "I need access to the secure labs," he declared, his voice smooth and commanding. Mia glanced at Mark, the more experienced security officer stationed at the desk. He was engrossed in his monitor, seemingly unaware of the tension building in the room. There was something unsettling about the man's demeanor, an electricity crackling in the air that made her instinctively uneasy. She asked, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. Mark's head snapped up, confusion flickering across his face. "Mia, it's fine." "But I still need to verify," she insisted, her heart thumping loudly in her chest. The training she had received echoed in her mind. Trust your instincts, never let anyone slip by without proper verification. The man raised an eyebrow, his expression shifting from curiosity to annoyance. "Yes, I do," Mia replied, defiantly meeting his gaze. Behind his calm exterior, something darker lurked. She could feel it. He hesitated for a moment, then sighed, handing her the badge with a flick of his wrist, as if dismissing her concern. Mia reached for it, feeling the cool plastic in her palm. Swiping it through the scanner, she watched the screen light up, her heart racing in anticipation. Security clearance, level 9. The air left her lungs like a deflating balloon. Level 9, this wasn't just a high clearance, it was a gateway to the most restricted areas of the facility where secrets were guarded with utmost vigilance. And yet she questioned him. A lump formed in her throat and time seemed to stretch into a hazy blur. Mia managed to ask, each word feeling heavy on her tongue. "Let's just say I'm someone who handles important matters," he replied, his expression shifting slightly as though he enjoyed her confusion. Her mind raced, the implications of what she had just stumbled into crashing over her like a tidal wave. He could easily dismantle her entire existence with a single word. The realization sent a chill down her spine. What had she just done? "Next time, be careful who you question, Mia," he said, his voice low and laced with something that could only be described as menace. He turned sharply and walked away, leaving her standing there, flush with embarrassment and fear. Mark broke the silence, shaking his head in disbelief. "You questioned him." Mia shook her head, the adrenaline still crashing through her veins. "I don't care who he is." Mark's eyes widened. "Mia, that's not just some random employee. That's a level 9 security clearance." Mia felt her stomach twist. It was just a routine check. "You thought wrong," Mark said, voice laced with urgency. "You need to understand this isn't just a job, it's a game where every move counts." As the days rolled on, that encounter hung over her like a dark cloud. Every time she passed the security desk, dread pooled in the pit of her stomach. Was he watching her? She didn't want to live in fear, but the weight of uncertainty felt suffocating. It wasn't until one afternoon that she would find herself tangled in the web of secrecy that surrounded her. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Whispers filled the hallways about an important briefing called by the elusive Level 9. As she settled into her chair at the conference table, she caught sight of him leaning against the wall, casually commanding the room without saying a word. His presence loomed like a storm cloud ready to unleash its wrath. "Today we're addressing Project Titan," he announced finally, pushing away from the wall with an ease that was almost unnerving. Mia's mind raced. Project Titan, she had heard whispers but never had a name to attach to it. As he spoke, her instincts kicked in again. There was an urgency in his tone, a drive pushing everyone around him to agree without question. The discussion unfolded, ideas bouncing around, but beneath the surface, Mia sensed an underlying chaos. Concerns were expressed, but they were quickly brushed aside as if those questioning the path were mere distractions. Somewhere deep in her mind, alarm bells rang. The audacity, how could they consider moving forward without proper protocols? Finally, unable to contain herself, she interjected, "I think we need to reevaluate our approach. There are significant risks involved." The room fell silent. All eyes turned to her, a mixture of surprise and intrigue dancing in the air. The man's expression was unreadable, but she caught a flicker of something. Was it annoyance or curiosity? "Ambition is essential," he replied, but his tone was firm, as if daring her to pursue the thought. "Opportunities built on shaky foundations aren't worth pursuing," she shot back, her resolve hardening around her instincts. Tension rippled through the room like a live wire. The air was thick with uncertainty as murmurs spread among the attendees. Anne's gaze locked onto hers, a storm brewing beneath his exterior. "You're brave to speak up, but you're also walking on thin ice," he warned. "Goodness, I hope I don't fall in," she responded flippantly, but she felt the tremor of truth beneath her words. What had begun as a simple question now felt like a dangerous game where the stakes were life and death. After the meeting, the tension laid heavy in the air, but there was also a flicker of respect in the man's expression. Was he impressed, annoyed? Mia couldn't decipher it. She stood there, caught between the thrill of having spoken out and the fear of possible consequences. Days turned into a whirlwind of preparation. Mia felt compelled to gather more information about Project Titan, hidden truths nestling within swirling rumors. Each bit of data uncovered felt like armor against the uncertainty that threatened to engulf her. Then came the night of reckoning. She found herself alone in the office long after everyone else had left. The fluorescent lights buzzed and shadows danced along the walls. Before she could settle into her thoughts, the door cracked open and the man in the suit stepped inside. "Mia," he said, an urgency in his tone. Her heart raced. "There's been a leak," he replied, stepping closer, tension radiating from his body. "We need to contain this before it spirals out of control." The air thickened between them. The gravity of the situation settled into her bones. This was serious. "Information is getting out about Project Titan. Sensitive data that could put us all at risk. If we don't act quickly, we could lose everything," he said, urgency sharpening his features. Milliseconds felt like an eternity as her mind raced. Could she trust him? Was this another manipulation or a genuine plea for help? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. "I need your eyes and ears. We can figure this out together," he explained, his intensity urging her to decide quickly. A surge of determination flowed through her veins. She had always wanted to be part of something bigger than herself, to feel like her choices mattered. "I'm in," she replied, uncertainty now interlaced with adrenaline. As they began to dig deeper into the shadows, every piece of information felt like a thread connecting them together, a shared purpose that blended ambition and fear. Her instincts compelled her to trust him, even when doubt clawed at the edges of her mind. Through sleepless nights and puzzling conversations, they uncovered a labyrinth of secrets, a maze that revealed more than just data breaches. With every discovery, a sense of purpose anchored Mia to the mission. She was no longer a passive observer, she was in the fight. Then came the day the air shifted yet again. The day they discovered a damning piece of information hidden within the facility's cloud storage. Both of them stood in her office late into the night, pursuing lines of code that revealed connections to individuals outside the organization, plotting against Project Titan. "This could change everything," the man said, voice strained with urgency. "If this gets out," Mia murmured, her heart pounding. The implications were monumental. "Connections to another project. Someone within our team is feeding them information," he muttered, scanning through the data with fervor. Mia's heart sank, the weight of betrayal pressing down. The man's expression shifted, his eyes darkening. "No, we can't trust them. If we go to them, they'll shut this down," she asked, anxiety twisting in her stomach. "We need to confront the source ourselves, find out who is leaking the information before we take action," he urged, but alarm bells rang loudly in her mind. The choices ahead felt like a dizzying blur, and Mia struggled against the currents pulling at her. She had to decide, would she dive into the unknown with him, trusting this man who had already shown her the darker facets of power? Or would she protect herself and walk away from the danger? In that pivotal moment, the pieces fell into place. The thrill of the chase ignited a fire within her, and she chose to leap head first. "Let's do it," she said, her voice resonating with newfound courage. They plotted their next moves, secrets thickening the air as shadows loomed larger with each passing day. But with every decision they made, the clock began to tick louder, a warning, counting down to something unimaginable approaching on the horizon. Uncertainty felt heavy in her gut as they prepared to confront the hidden enemy. Mia knew that her fate now entwined with his, spinning a narrative both exhilarating and terrifying. Little did she know, the truth wasn't just waiting to be untangled, it would alter everything she thought she knew. As they approached the door that would lead them deeper into the web of lies, an unsettling realization gripped her heart. In pursuit of the truth, she had opened a door she might never be able to close, and the consequences could change her life forever. Would she be ready for what lay ahead? The knock on the door shook her from her thoughts, and just as she gave the signal to enter, the door swung wide, revealing a familiar face. The game was about to change, but how much more was it about to unravel? Everything hinged on their next move, and the pieces were falling into place, all leading to the dark heart of Project Titan.